The surveillance state. We're gonna go a little bit darker today, okay? I'm gonna be talking about and providing my argument as to why I believe that not only are we already living in the surveillance state, which is going to continue to expand its power, but I believe that it's ultimately going to win. And there's nothing we can do about it. So here is my argument, okay? So here's the proof of the initial stages that are clearly showing themselves, right? So the EU bans anonymous hosted crypto wallets and cash payments over $10,000. And this is quite alarming, right? Now, many people might not mind that anonymous hosted crypto wallets are banned, but cash payments over 10K being banned is quite, alarming, especially when you consider inflation. Soon enough, $10,000 will be nothing, right? Cars will probably start going for 15 or 20,000 euros to buy just a regular car that's not even new, just a secondhand car. And so what is their goal here, right? So they're obviously trying to bring digital payments. And this really cannot be stopped. And I'll show the evidence as we progress. Christine Lagarde, the president of European Central Bank, announcing it will be illegal to pay more than $1,000. Now we're moving the goalposts, right? Because I think this was a few years ago this was announced, but now they're moving to $1,000. You can't even spend $1,000 of your own money in cash, and the digital era will come with controls even under $300 of spending. So they want to be controlling, right? The central bank, which is the real, power structure behind this, wants to control all of our spending. What is the pro, right? Because their argument is, look, we're trying to lower crime, right? Criminals are the ones who are using these dollars because Europe is dealing with a lot of criminals, right? There's a lot of, drugs being smuggled and things of that nature, human trafficking, etc. So all of that is obviously happening in cash and in other things such as crypto, because if you use the bank system, your money can be frozen, your money, history, it can all be tracked, so they don't want that, right? So that is a pro. So you're reducing crime. And for them, from their perspective, another pro is they have control, right? So with this level of control, now they can implement their agenda. So if they give you money, right? So for example, if they give you money, they say you can only spend $100 on this types of spending, right? You cannot go on vacation because that's too much carbon emission is being emitted by your trip. So you have to offset this via a different transaction. So now they can track your transactions all the way to the last final thing. Now, of course, also the economy. Then they can say, oh, we can, help you help the economy, because if things go down, we can move money around, right? We can pump money here, pump money there. We can track everything to the last detail, so we'll have better control over the economy and bring about stability. Now, so far, some of you who are saying are already not liking what you're hearing, but many people do like what they're hearing, and I'll prove that in a second. So another thing is, and this is pretty much the argument that they're going to be using, right? Or that they are already using. And it actually goes even deeper. So Australia has introduced social media bans and will soon require adults to use a digital ID just to search the web. And this has already been implemented for teens, right? So their argument is adult content, protecting younger people. I believe under 17, you have to have an ID to search, etc. So it's to protect the youth from adult content. And this makes sense. In fact, I am pro this idea because right now it's simply put way too easy for younger people to access adult content. And the adult content is so extreme now, you will pretty much damage your child by introducing them to this. And they're accessing this stuff, as young as 12, 11, and perhaps even younger. As soon as they have a phone, pretty much, they're accessing this stuff. Even if you lock it down, if they have any type of chat with a friend, and if their phone is locked down, their friend's phone might not be locked down, and they'll see it that way, right? So if there only needs to be one kid whose parents are kind of not paying attention, and that kid won't affect all the other kids, right? So it's very hard to say, because I've heard a lot of people say, well, we don't want this, it's the parents' responsibility, but I think these are just perverts who don't want ID, who want to access that stuff and don't want to be tracked while accessing it. But any sane person okay with that. But the issue is that obviously they're not going to stop there, right? So this is coming to grown-ups, right? You too, you need an ID. So they're now moving, because now that it has been implemented for the youth, they're now trying to move this to the adults. So now the adults will also have to have an ID to search and pretty much do anything online. And now the scheme reveals itself, right? So initially, the initial step is good. Keep young people away from adult content. But then now you need an ID. So this is now about government control. They want to see what you're posting, how you're thinking. They want to not have any privacy. And I do believe Australia also banned end-to-end encrypted chats, or it has had the intention to do that in the past. I don't know if it passed or not. And so they want full surveillance of your internet traffic, and they want it to be linked to your ID. So they're essentially taking a book from, you guessed it, China, right? Because in China, they already have all this stuff, and they pretty much are learning from China. They're right next to China. There are many Asians in Australia. So they're kind of familiar with this, okay? So it makes sense from their perspective. And this is also happening in the United States of America, right? So in 2013, Edward Snowden leaked thousands of classified documents showing that the U.S. National Security Agency, or NSA, was conducting a mass surveillance on a global scale, right? So this is not a conspiracy. Before this, people would say it's a conspiracy, but it's not, right? So we now know that the U.S. is collecting data, right? And not just collecting any data, but collecting all data, okay? All data is being collected, and essentially in a huge database. It's searchable, and it's, our emails, our pictures, anything we do on our devices are being collected, and so that they can search at any time. And I do believe it was like, okay, if you're 3 hops removed, they'll gather all your data. So let's say if this person right here is a suspect, anyone 3 hops removed from them is also fully searched and investigated, the whole history, etc. But the thing is, when you do this, you pretty much search the entire globe, right? Because it doesn't take more than a few hops, I forgot the exact number, but for you to be linked to pretty much anyone in the world. And so inevitably, they're pretty much scanning the entire world. On top of that, it hasn't really stopped any real terrorists that we're aware of, because that was the argument, right? So they're talking about safety. This is for safety. Because once we have this, okay, now we can track everybody, and terrorists can't be planning stuff, because then we can, catch them pretty much. But this has been, now imagine with AI and stuff, how much data they have, how much they could search through, and all this stuff, right? So it's a proper nightmare. And this is really the fight that's happening right now. It's pretty much the centralized world that is fighting the decentralized world, right? And the centralized world is sadly going to win. The decentralized world is not as organized as the centralized world. And what woke up the elites, right, the people in power, I think, is Bitcoin, right? When Bitcoin came about, it solved a huge problem. So what problem did Bitcoin solve? Well, the key is essentially you cannot copy what I have. So right now, if you have an image, anybody else can copy that image. And how would you know which one is the original? Is it this one or this one? There was no indication, right? And so Bitcoin came and made it such that you cannot copy a Bitcoin via something called proof of work, right? So you had to perform works, and your machines had to solve a puzzle. When they solved this puzzle, they showed it to the network, and then the network would accept it. And this is how you would earn your Bitcoin. And nobody can copy it, because only because of the quote unquote blockchain, all the proofs are linked, and in these proofs, Bitcoins are generated. And so if you make a fake Bitcoin, you cannot just come in this network with your Bitcoin, because you have to perform the calculations and the proofs of the past to show that your Bitcoin is real. You have to, your hash shows that it is real what you're showing, right? That your Bitcoin is authentic and has been earned through this process. Otherwise, it is rejected. And thus, it has solved something called the double spend problem, which is this pretty much, right? How do you know what is real, what is authentic, has been solved by proof of work and the chain of this work. And as this chain grows, more and more work is required to hack this system, if you will. So if you want to hack the system, you have to do all the calculations, and which is, called a 51% attack. And to do that, all the machines, more and more machines are joining this network. So the difficulty of breaking this system keeps increasing over time. And initially, a very small, humble system could hack this, but now to perform this attack, you're pretty much talking about nation states. Those are the only ones left that can now hack this system, because it is financially, it doesn't make sense. You would have to invest millions upon millions, if not billions of dollars, and then the bitcoins you would get would become worthless, and it will pretty much recover relatively quick. So it doesn't make sense for anybody except for nation states to attack it. And in the future, even nation states probably won't be able to attack it. And this Bitcoin was initially taken as a joke, right? Initially, the value was so small, it was meaningless. But then now it has elevated and escalated to such a degree that nobody can deny it. And so this system, which then launched this huge cryptocurrency market, which many coins even come with privacy, etc., has essentially woken up the states, right? The different governments to this new reality that unless they clamp down, freedom may actually come about, right? And they don't want that, right? And now it's a fight between freedom and safety. Now, I'm not here promoting Trump or, against the EU per se, because each side has its arguments, right? And, freedom is currently winning, but there's no guarantee. And I think in the long term, safety is going to win, which is where we will lose our freedom. And why do I think safety is going to win? Well, it is as simple as this. The population of people age 65 and above is rising in every country and will continue to do so in the future. So according to this graph, assuming it continues like that, assuming we don't get some catastrophic event that will, catastrophic events tend to take out older people first, and the people that remain are usually young and healthy. So assuming that doesn't happen, what we'll see is that 1 in 4 people will be over the age of 65. Now, when you think about older people, do they choose for freedom, which freedom represents volatility, uncertainty, etc., or would they choose for safety, which comes with predictability, etc., but you will lack freedom. You won't be able to do as you please, right? Which makes sense. If everyone can do what they want, there will be obviously more chaos. It's unpredictable what will happen one day from the next. But if there's safety and everyone is tracked and no one can do except what is approved, then there's predictability, but you have obviously no freedom, right? And so I do think older people tend to vote or choose for freedom. When you think about all the revolutionary things in the past, it was all young people, not older people. And I mean, look at this thing, right? Age of the founding fathers in 1776 of the United States of America. Some of these would be considered children nowadays, right? Look at this. This gentleman was 18 years old. I mean, this would be considered a child in the modern age, right? But in that time, people were developing much faster, right? So this was not a child at all. This is a full-blown adult. I mean, he was part of the group that created one of the wealthiest and most dominant nations in recorded history. And as you can see, one of these, 21, 20, all of these are young, right? These are all young men, with perhaps the exception being this gentleman right here. Everyone else, I would consider them young men, right? Very hard to see them rule any country. Can you imagine some 20-year-old ruling Europe right now? Probably not. And so that's why I believe safety is going to win over freedom, and thus we will lose our freedom. And eventually, sadly, I do think the worst case is going to happen. As freedom decreases and safety increases, we'll probably hit a threshold where some authoritarian figure will come. And imagine in the past, when you think about World War I and II, the technology back then was insufficient. But then imagine this modern technology where everyone has an ID online, a history can be tracked, etc. What type of craziness can then be executed? I do think that will happen, but then I do think eventually after this disaster, we will recover, hopefully, and learn from our lesson. But hey, with that being said, watch out, protect yourself and your family, and I want to give a special shout out to the Patreons. Salute! soldier.